Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, Governor Eric Holcomb delivered his State of the State address and a Ball State economist breaks it down. We get a preview of the NCAA Convention in downtown Indy. Our Endangered Indiana series returns with a look at the Davis Clinic in Marion. The CEO of the Girl Scouts of Indiana looks at the new cookie season. A serial health tech entrepreneur details his latest app. An Indianapolis company celebrates 75 years, and we talk about the week's biggest stories with our partners at the IBJ. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Alex Brown. Despite another challenging year with the pandemic, Indiana saw more than its fair share of economic success. That was one takeaway from Governor Eric Holcomb's State of the State address, which focused on the state's economic performance, from low employment to a growing budget surplus to record investment and job commitment numbers. But did the speech hit the mark, and what about the governor's vision for the future? Mike Hicks, director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at Ball State University, joined Gary Dick to break down the address.
Overall, takeaways from your standpoint from the speech?
Yeah, I think the governor deserves high marks for the tone of the speech. Certainly good to focus on the good news we've had after this really tough year, low unemployment, good GDP growth, good recovery overall, and a great budget environment for the state's legislature as they meet this year and thinking about how to craft the rest of the year's budget and just for the next cycle. So.
Yeah, one of the takeaways or the things that stood out to me, the economic development numbers. Now, these are forward-looking, are job commitments. They haven't happened yet, but record numbers in terms of investment and job commitments during another pandemic year.
Right. You really have to hand it to the folks at IEDC. 2 years that have been easily the toughest in Indiana history to attract new jobs and business, and they're rolling out record numbers. At the same time, they're doing a lot of other things, Ready Grant and other stuff that, fantastic work by that team.
One of the things, too, he talked about income growth. I know you took issue with maybe some of the numbers that were used on the income growth side of the equation.
Right. So the governor's right. We've done well since 2015 in GDP growth. That masks some really sluggishness. We're underperforming the nation as a whole. And he misspoke on the jobs numbers. We're really down about 68,000 jobs from the beginning of the pandemic. But, the fact is our recovery looks like the nation's as a whole. And when Indiana's growing as fast as the country as a whole, that's good news overall.
One of the other things that stood out to me, population growth, because we hear so much about the need to grow the population, been losing population. Here's what the governor had to say about Indiana and population growth.
Since 2010, our population has increased by 300,000 people, far eclipsing the rate of any neighboring state. In fact, the U.S. Census just put out that from July of 2020 to July of 2021, Indiana saw more people move to our state than any of the 11 other states that make up the entire Midwest region.
Mike, in your view, is that evidence that perhaps some of these efforts to grow, to keep talent, attract talent, they're working?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the focus on quality of place, quality of life, while incomplete, is making a difference here. It's important to know that the bulk of that growth has occurred in the Indianapolis metropolitan area, almost 100% of it. But the fact that Indiana is growing when Illinois, Michigan, Ohio are not is really an important benefit, long-term benefit for the state.
Yeah, I know a big focus area, the Ready grants, $500 million that leveraged a lot more private investment. But these Ready grants that were handed out at the end of the year around the state of Indiana, I know you feel those are really positive influences on that whole equation.
Right. This was a really big policy year that we've just passed out. The Ready grants are important because they provide really 5 or 6 regions with almost as much money as the regional cities grant to sort of stimulate the construction and infrastructure investment in quality place. Again, there's still a lot of gaps, particularly in education, but this is how you use this money to make a long-term difference in much of the state.
The governor touched on developments, initiatives in other parts of the state. A big project, a couple big projects actually in Northwest Indiana he talked about as well.
The South Shore double track and the Westlake corridor are completed. They won't just reduce travel times, they will. but they'll fuel an explosion of new investment and opportunity in Northwest Indiana, the likes we haven't seen in decades.
The South Shore, those projects, Mike, been talked about for decades. That Northwest Indiana economy, such a big economic engine. How important are those projects to that region?
Right. We're essentially a large urban area, really from South Bend west to Chicago, and with a lot of available developable land there for people. It's a great place to live if you can get to those labor markets. And so what this does is changes dramatically the opportunity for primarily residential development. In my judgment, we could see just really significant growth. And I don't think the governor is exaggerating when he says this is going to be tremendous. It's going to take a long time to develop, but this is how you make that part of Indiana ready for the 21st century.
Yep. Mike Hicks, as always, great perspective. Really great to see you to kick off 2022, and hope to see you soon.
Good to see you.
All right.
Still to come, our Endangered Indiana series takes a look at a historic site in Grant County, and we'll get a preview of the upcoming Girl Scout cookie season. But first, the college football playoff has come and gone, but Indianapolis is about to host another major event centered on intercollegiate athletics that could have long-term impact. In this week's Inside Indiana Sports, NCAA Division I Governance Vice President Kevin Lennon joined Bill Benner to talk about the NCAA Convention this week, which is expected to bring more than 3,000 college athletic administrators to downtown Indy.
Well, and you reminded me on the air, this is part of the agreement that goes back 22 years ago when the NCAA moved to that they would always have, well, not always, but on a regular basis, always have the annual convention here, as well as innumerable meetings and other places. So in the wake of the Final Four, the CFP, and now the annual convention comes to town.
That's exactly right. I mean, the star continued to shine very bright on Indianapolis. So starting with March and what happened with that awesome men's tournament being conducted here in Indianapolis on the heels of the college football playoff, here we are bringing in 3,500 of our membership, our presidents, athletic directors, students, to talk about these important issues that impact intercollegiate athletics and our students. And we're doing it right here in Indianapolis as a part of that agreement that's now 22 years in the making, Bill.
Well, Kevin, again, the NCAA has taken a deep look at its constitution, its overall governing documents. This all relates back to last summer, the institution of name, image, likeness. So many things going on with the NCAA, and now it's all coming. Can you just kind of tell us what we might expect substantively from this convention?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. So we are going to bring in members of Divisions 1, 2, and 3, and they will, as a group, vote on a new NCAA Constitution. We happen to lose a Supreme Court decision, some may be aware, this past summer that really required us to go about changing the way we do our work. And Chairman Robert Gates, the former Secretary of State, was asked to chair this, and the culmination of their work will take place on a vote next week on a new constitution. It does a number of things, Bill. It streamlines the Board of Governors, which is our top ranking group, and it also elevates the student voice, which we all know is incredibly important. And then most importantly, after that is done with the Constitution, energy can then be turned to the very specific issues that, particularly in Division I, have challenged us over time, and it's time to take those on. As we've said, change is really no longer an option, but really a necessity, and our membership will address those issues coming up.
And I know the new Constitution specifically states no direct pay for play, but we have to acknowledge the new reality, and certainly athletes are deserving of benefiting from their name, image, and likeness.
That's exactly right. And so we adopted an interim rule, our membership this past summer, on the name, image, likeness. And by the way, I would share with you that everyone at the NCAA, we're very excited about this opportunity for young people. We know how multi-talented they are. We know that they're more than just athletes and just students. And this name, image, likeness opportunities gives them an opportunity to share who they fully are and be compensated for that. So that is terrific. What we don't want is pay for play. And what we don't want is it to enter into the recruiting environment, and thus the challenge that our membership continues to address.
And Kevin, as we wrap up, I know athlete welfare, gender equity, inclusion, diversity are important tenets of this new Constitution as we move forward.
That's exactly right. And I would just remind everyone, we are here to serve our student athletes and this incredible transformative experience. And so all the issues that we do from a committee perspective and certainly at the convention are designed to look at the policies and the rules that will advance and enhance the student experience. And that does include gender equity, student well-being, welfare, et cetera. And so it's going to be a busy week, and we're happy to be doing it here in Indianapolis.
Well, and we need to remind people that the NCAA is 1,200 institutions, 5,000 student athletes, 3 divisions, so it's a very complex organization. Kevin Lennon, the NCAA's Division I Director or Vice President for Governance, we wish you the best, and thanks for being on the show.
Yes, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Indianapolis Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Alicia Johnson is this week's guest on our Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. Subscribe for free from your favorite podcast provider. This week, we resume our Endangered Indiana series. In Grant County, a family of doctors in the early 50s brought innovative medicine and architectural design to Marion. Around Indiana reporter Mary Rachel Redmond has more on the storied Davis Clinic.
You know, if you were to follow a busy doctor as he makes his daily round of calls, you'd find yourself having a mighty busy time keeping up with him.
But the Davis family of doctors weren't just busy. They were a rare breed.
This is Mayo Clinic doctors, Frank Lloyd Wright, the arts, all these things. It's kind of a fascinating story.
That it is. It started with patriarch Dr. Merrill Davis and his wife Josephine, a woman newspapers described as Marion's matriarch of the arts.
My grandparents were very much into architecture and art.
Major art patrons that were extremely well connected. The couple once hosted Amelia Earhart.
Well, it was very interesting, as always.
At the height of her fame in their Marion home. So it's not exactly surprising that just over a decade later, their son Richard, now a Mayo Clinic trained surgeon, was working with world-famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright to design a modern family home in the hills of Marion.
If the thing is successful, the architect's effort, you can't imagine that house anywhere than right where it is.
Uncle Dick built this Frank Lloyd Wright house out in Shady Hills. As they were preparing to do that, he and my grandfather and uncle and my dad asked him if he would be interested in designing a medical building. Well, he said he had not done that before.
Wright declined the Davis' offer, but it would ultimately be awarded to another high-profile architect, a guy by the name of Harry Weiss.
He was one of the famous architects of the Chicago shoreline. Weiss also designed the metro in Washington, D.C.
The Davis Clinic was born in 1952, bringing Mayo Clinic-like care to the residents of Marion, Indiana.
Marion, up until before the war, did not have specialists.
The things that people nowadays just assume are available to them in terms of medical care were started here.
Perhaps what made the Davis Clinic so unique, its ability to recruit some of the country's best trained doctors, including Ladislas Wojcik.
Dr. Wojcik, one of the first females to graduate from Harvard Medical School, and she came to Marion.
As you remember it, does this still look the same?
Yes, except for that thing that's been added onto the front.
Obviously, it's no longer rest care.
No.
So did that say Davis Clinic?
Davis Clinic right there. And when I was born, I think it was still one story. They added the second and third stories on about 1960.
It was attractive and it was bright. I remember the fish tanks.
I just remember my grandmother being such a huge part of this because she was behind the design and the arts, and it was almost like a museum to me.
Why is it important? I think the legacy of the clinic and what that meant for the town is worth preserving. When you tear the building down, then a lot of the memory goes away.
Anybody that drives by today, it's just maybe another building, but the history behind it, if they knew the lives that were entwined in it and what created it, the story is just really it's pretty cool, and it's not being told.
Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Whether they're using their STEM skills to solve a problem, changing a law to help their community, or starting an innovative nonprofit, Girl Scouts can build a better future for themselves and their communities. The popular Girl Scout cookie program is a great example of that, and Girl Scouts of Central Indiana CEO Danielle Shockey joined us to discuss the new business badge Girl Scouts can earn and some of the life lessons during cookie season.
Everybody knows Girl Scout cookie season, very popular and really a tradition in so many areas of the country. I want to talk about that in a moment, but first the business aspect, because I think that's what a lot of people don't realize or understand are the business and entrepreneurship lessons that really come with Girl Scout season for these young ladies.
Absolutely. So one of the 4 pillars in Girl Scouts is entrepreneurship, and we really try to instill in girls through this program goal setting, decision making, money management, business ethics. And furthermore, we think about their future, and we want them to think about their future. Women-owned businesses are only 17% of the business and startup world. We would love for our girls to see themselves as the next cookie boss business CEO.
That's great. I love it. How about the badges? Because you've always been able to earn badges related to selling cookies, but I think there's a new one, right? A new badge that really hits directly at that business entrepreneurship aspect.
Yeah, so it's called the Cookie Business. There's a badge available for all girls ages kindergarten through 12th grade, all different levels of skill. And we really recognized through COVID that the entrepreneurship innovation spirit had to shift a bit. And so the storefront is different than it was 2 years ago. So what does that mean in the Girl Scout cookie world? They had to think of new ways to actually reach the consumer. And so this badge really teaches that starting a business and running a successful cookie business, in this case, takes a lot of creative problem solving.
Yeah, you mentioned the pandemic and contact-free selling. There's a partnership I know that's been established between the Girl Scouts and DoorDash as well. I think that's a great example of what you're talking about.
It is, and so we're super thrilled that DoorDash has said they'd love to be our partner. So starting in February here in Central Indiana and across our 45 counties, your DoorDash app will feature all 9 varieties of our cookies.
Okay, now let's get to the serious business and the cookies themselves, Danielle. And I know this year a lot of people are going to be very interested in this. There's a new cookie, a new offering. Give us the scoop.
So this, if you can see this, it's a brownie-inspired, fudge-laced with salted caramel center. And so you might think brownie and chewy, but it actually is like a crunchiness to it that is surprising. I'm not going to go on a limb and say it's my favorite, but it's in my top 3. It's very, very good.
Okay, nothing has knocked off Thin Mints for me, but this may be the one, so we'll see. We'll see on that.
I'd like to have that challenge for you.
Yeah. Hey, how about some numbers? Because how many cookies? It's an amazing number. How many cookies do you sell?
Yep, in Central Indiana, we like our Girl Scout cookies. 2.8 million cookies are sold here in Central Indiana annually.
Yep, wow. And I know you've got 17,000 girls involved in the 45 counties you represent. And I know you look at this cookie season as a great opportunity or a great time for girls to get involved with Girl Scouts.
Absolutely. So they can still join. In fact, it's a really fun time to join Girl Scouts. You kind of jump right into something as exciting as the cookie program. And then you have Girl Scout camp to look forward to, as well as just a variety of programs. So you can still join. You can do that on our website. We welcome new girls all the time. Troops are growing. And so absolutely, still join us and come have a cookie and learn some great entrepreneurship skills along the way.
That's great. Danielle Shockey is the CEO of Girl Scouts of Central Indiana. Girl Scout cookie season is here. A lot of business lessons to be learned as well. Danielle, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Later in the podcast, we'll get details on how the next generation of Hoosier construction professionals is getting a boost, plus a spotlight on a Hoosier business celebrating a big milestone. But now, health and wellness are big focuses each new year. Indianapolis-based Life Omic, led by serial entrepreneur Dr. Don Brown, is launching a new tool it says can help people lose weight and prevent disease. Business of Health reporter Kylie Valletta has more.
Life Omic is a spin-out from Interactive Intelligence, which Dr. Don Brown sold for more than $1 billion in 2016. In the last 6 years, Life Omic has launched a series of health lifestyle apps and is now rolling out its newest product called Life Ascent, an app-based wellness subscription service. And joining me now to give us the details is Dr. Don Brown, the founder and chief executive officer of Life Omic. Thank you for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
All right, before we talk about your new app, let's talk first about Life Omic, sort of the parent company. Explain how your mission really centers on data, genomics, and translating all of that for your users.
Yeah, our real mission is just to help people live better, longer, happier lives. We started off working with IU School of Medicine, my alma mater, on cancer research projects, and we published a little mobile app just for fun, and now have 4 million downloads of people around the world.
So interesting. So in addition to being a huge success in the tech industry, you're also a medical doctor. And that provides the backdrop for a lot of what Life Omic does. So let's talk about Life Ascent, your new app. Explain how it's really based on the latest research and what the app is.
Yeah, we spent about a year trying to identify the things, the simple behavioral things that people can do to improve their health, reduce their risk of cancer, Alzheimer's, other diseases. And we decided to work with leading clinicians around the country to put together a really easy to use program that people could access right from their phones, that each day would give them tips as to how they can improve insulin sensitivity and other factors that ultimately can help them live longer and more healthy lives.
Okay, so we have to be real because everyone cares about food. And so I think that we do need to talk about part of this is you can lose weight on it. Explain how it's based on intermittent fasting. Everyone wants to know, what is it with the food?
Yeah. I became fascinated with intermittent fasting a few years ago. I was doing a graduate program at Johns Hopkins, read some papers, and really I came to believe that it's a great way. Most of us aren't capable of radically changing our diets. I love beer. I love pizza. I come from Kentucky. I love biscuits and gravy. So I'm not going to give those things up. But if you ask me to pack those into kind of an 8-hour window within a day, which is really what intermittent fasting is about, it's amazing how you can do those things, still enjoy the things you love, and yet move toward a healthy weight and a better blood sugar control.
Okay, so Life Ascent, individuals can subscribe to it, but it's also a wellness program for employers. It can be used that way. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. We developed the Life Ascent program, for individuals. So anybody can go and sign up at lifeascent.io or download one of our mobile apps. But then we offer it as part of a corporate wellness solution, and we've got hundreds of companies, including some companies, organizations in Indiana who are using that to try to improve the health and wellness of their employees. There's a big focus on mental health, which is a big deal these days. So we're really excited about both.
And you're seeing some swift success. In 2020, $5 million in revenue. That was up from $2 million in 2019. What do you think is leading to that success?
Well, initially, as I said, we were just focused on working with IU School of Medicine on cancer research. That now has been moved over into IU Health. But we're also now starting to deal with other organizations selling our wellness solutions. And so that's generating additional revenue for us.
And Life Ascent is available nationwide. But explain how you hope Hoosiers play a big role in its growth and how it's used.
Well, obviously we have a tremendous presence in Indiana. We've got great relationships with organizations like IU Health and the School of Medicine. So it's just kind of natural to start at our home base. Sadly, a lot of Hoosiers are overweight, fighting type 2 diabetes. And we really think this is something that can bend the curve. We try to lead people through very small steps so that they can incrementally improve their health habits, and those little baby steps add up to big changes over the long haul.
All right, because you're not busy enough running a company, you also wrote a book. We have about 30 seconds left. Tell us quickly about the book.
Well, it's called Understanding Life, and it really reflects kind of my odyssey in learning about how the body works, how there are ancient programs in our cells that we can activate through things like intermittent fasting, exposure to cold, saunas, other things. So it was a lot of fun to write, and all proceeds go to the Riley Children's Hospital.
All right, Dr. Don Brown, again, launching Life Ascent as part of Life Omic. Thank you for being on the show today.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
There continues to be huge demand for construction workers all over the country, and that certainly includes Indiana. The Associate General Contractors of America says construction employment in the Indianapolis, Carmel, Anderson metro area hit an all-time high in October, climbing 8% over the previous year. The Indiana Careers in Construction Association initiative has some answers on how to continue that momentum. Director of Community Outreach Lynn Busby joined the show to talk about it.
Let's talk about, and you know, there's so much pressure on workforce across all industries. As you look at the construction trades, and I mentioned those numbers coming into the story here, how substantial, how severe is the demand for construction workers in Indiana?
Yeah, you know, Gary, I hear it every day as I'm out talking with contractor community partners as well as our training partners that there's really a shortage across the board in all the trades. All of the contractors consider it workforce development, labor, their number one priority, their number one issue that they're going to be facing in the coming years.
Yep. And when you're talking about the construction trades, this is a whole list of professions: bricklayers, carpenters, electricians, boilermakers, a number of areas that you're talking about, and these areas that pay some very good wages.
Yeah, they do. You know, it's estimated that an individual coming through a registered apprentice program in the construction industry could earn up to $300,000 more over a career, over a lifetime, than someone not coming through an apprentice program.
Well, let's talk about the apprenticeship program, which is what you're here to talk about, and the impact it's having, what it's all about. Kind of walk us through that apprenticeship initiative and how it works.
Yeah, so our approach really focuses on high school students with career exploration opportunities for them. But an apprenticeship program, in addition to having a higher wage, once an apprentice comes through that program, they leave a program with their journeyman's card in whichever trade they've selected. They leave with multiple technical certifications. They also leave that apprenticeship program with an associate's degree from Ivy Tech. Ivy Tech is a training partner with our trades, so they have 60 hours that they have earned through their apprenticeship program.
Yeah, and I think Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
The ICCA represents the 14 different building trades, as you mentioned. We also support 60 training centers across the state of Indiana.
Yeah, I think really important to point out the cost to the individual going through the apprenticeship program. It's zero or a minimal cost, right?
It's zero to minimal cost. It's also a learn while you earn opportunity. Mm-hmm. So those individuals in an apprenticeship program are working with a contractor. So they're also earning a competitive wage while they're going through that apprentice training program.
There's so much.
They're earning and they're getting that degree.
Yeah, there's so much focus, again, on workforce and kind of career pathways, if you will. This would seem to be a really viable pathway for a lot of people. Do you think part of the challenge is education or awareness that these apprenticeship programs exist?
Yeah, it is. Focus turned away from vocational education or training at the high school level decades ago.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a repercussion about that. So it's not just educating or making students and parents and Hoosiers across the board aware of the opportunities in construction, but also focused on those educators to make sure that they understand what the benefits of those apprenticeship programs bring to individuals and families across our state.
You've got thousands of individuals, apprentices in your program. As you look going forward, do you anticipate the demand is still going to be there and to get those folks in the apprenticeship program and into the industry?
It is. Our primary focus here with the Careers in Construction Association is increasing the number of applicants to construction apprenticeship programs. There's no sign that the construction industry is slowing down, so that demand is going to continue to grow, especially as the existing workforce ages out of the workplace.
Indiana Careers in Construction Association, the Building Trades Apprenticeship Program. Lynn Busby, the Director of Community Outreach. An important program, certainly at a very important time in Indiana. Lynn, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Gary.
Still ahead, our partners at the IBJ join us to talk about this week's biggest stories. But first, Indianapolis-based Willoughby Industries has been in business now for 75 years. It's a family-owned manufacturer of stainless steel plumbing fixtures at correctional facilities all over the country. But that's not the only place you'll find Willoughby products. They're in healthcare and educational facilities and RVs as well. President Craig Alderson joined Gary to talk about the company's big milestone.
Craig is the president of the company and one with a rich heritage, all here in Indianapolis, where it all began 75 years ago. Craig, give us really a thumbnail of how Willoughby Industries got started.
We're a family-owned business. We're third generation presently. My wife's grandfather started the company in 1947 down on West Morris Street, and we've grown since then. And then my wife's father and mother ran the business for a number of years, and then my wife and I purchased the business in 2004 and have been fortunate to bring it to current day.
Started as a sheet metal production company, still do that, but the business has evolved in a big way over time. Give us a thumbnail description, Craig, of Willoughby Industries right now.
We're as I mentioned, family-owned, 130 employees located on the northwest side of Indianapolis in Park 100. We participate in a variety of what we term vertical markets. Corrections is one. So we're a manufacturer in the truest sense of stainless steel and solid surface plumbing fixtures and accessories for corrections, also for Parks and Rec, for behavioral healthcare facilities, and for schools.
Yeah,
those are our primary markets.
And you are the largest security plumbing fixtures company manufacturer by volume in the country, right? In the world, really.
That's absolutely true, and we've been very fortunate to get to that point in time. And I'd love to tell you we had a finely crafted business plan, but we weren't that clever. But it's just a lot of hard work and great people, and we've been blessed. And
you kind of talked about 1980, how kind of a break, if you will, got you into that corrections market here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, we were a supplier to the Marion County Jail here in Indianapolis at that time, and nothing to do with plumbing fixtures, but we were making and repairing some other things that they had needs for. And they approached us about a need they had because they had 7 of their cells shut down by the Board of Health. And they needed to make some repairs on the plumbing fixtures in those cells before they could reopen them. So they approached us. We came up with a solution. They liked the solution. And with that quick transaction, if you will, we came onto the scene. Yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, if that wouldn't have happened, who knows where we'd be today?
Yeah, now you are in correctional institutions all over the United States. You mentioned growth. 1995, you had about 40 employees. Now it's up to 130. So that's a great growth story. Really interesting to me too that you've made a commitment, very intentional about connecting with the Indianapolis Work Release Program, giving ex-offenders a second chance.
Yeah, that's been something that's near and dear to our hearts, and we've been dedicated to doing that over a period of years. I'd love to take credit for it. I can't. It was here well before my time and the relationship that is, and it's continued. And as time has gone on, other companies around the area have figured out that resource and have participated in the program as well. But it's been something that it's a way for us to give back. and it's a way for us to get some very good employees too.
Yeah.
So it's a mutually beneficial program.
Yeah. Final question for you, Craig, and that's manufacturing here in Indiana, in Indianapolis. That's where you started doing it. That's where you do all your manufacturing to this day. Advantages, in your view, of manufacturing here in Indiana?
There's no question about it. It's one of the best states, if not the best state, to be established in. Some of our competition is in other states, and we hear the climate economically and labor-wise they have to deal with, and it's just not the same. We're so fortunate to be in Indiana and to have leadership in Indiana, consistent leadership in Indiana that welcomes industry, and it's been a huge benefit for us. Absolutely.
Craig Alderson, the president of Willoughby Industries, celebrating 75 years, a real growth success story in Indianapolis. Craig, congratulations on the milestone, and hope to see you soon.
Gary, thanks for the time, and we look forward to it.
All right.
Sliding the vinyl on the spindle and sticking the stylus down on the groove is back and in a big way. Vinyl record albums are riding a 14-year streak of increasing sales, but there's a drawback for independent labels and musicians. Our partners at the Indianapolis Business Journal are looking at that and many other stories. Managing editor Greg Weaver was in studio to talk about them.
Greg, I know we both remember those days, right?
Yes, very much so.
Very, very well. But I think a very interesting story by Dave Lindquist on the popularity which has been building for a number of years of vinyl and the demand causing some supply chain issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So, vinyl sales have nearly doubled in the past year, 40 million in sales last year. And so what's happened is there aren't enough factories to keep up with demand. And so, even at popular retailers like Karma, during the Christmas season, they were not able to get new pressings of popular albums like Michael Jackson's Thriller or Prince. And then there are even bigger problems for some independent labels at Romanus Records in Franklin. They've had to wait much, much longer to get records pressed. So normally, they used to have to wait just maybe 3 to 6 months, and now it can be up to 10 months before they can get a record pressed.
Wow. Demand is a good thing, but sometimes it causes some problems. A very interesting story, to be sure. I know John Russell is looking at business travelers and how they can be stuck between a rock and a hard place if they get COVID on the road, right?
Yeah, so, unless it's happened to you, you don't kind of anticipate all the things and complications that might be caused. So, if you get COVID, you may have to extend your hotel stay. You probably have to reschedule your flight. You might miss some meetings, and there are all these things you have to take care of. And then on top of that, you have to look for health care in a city that you may not be familiar with. And so there are all kinds of things that you have to deal with.
Yeah, the age of COVID. One other story I want to talk about, the building trades, certainly a lot of demand for workers in that industry, but the building trades dealing with the pandemic, a lot of issues there as well.
Yeah, so schools that provide hands-on training for jobs like construction or auto mechanics or culinary arts, nursing, all of those things have had to really do a lot of navigating through the pandemic to be able to provide the clinical training that folks need. And so they've had to adjust for, early in the pandemic, some of these clinical settings were closed off altogether for a couple of months. And so training was delayed. And things are somewhat back to normal, but as the Omicron variant persists, they're still kind of on pins and needles waiting to see what impact that might have on their training.
Yeah, I'm certainly coming at a difficult time for those building trades programs. Greg Weaver, the managing editor at IBJ, another great edition coming up. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments as well as the top business news from throughout the state at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Alex Brown for Inside Indiana Business.